And we're back here to discuss what I feel were the bottom of the barrel of 2022. I want to get out of the way that these will actually be more in order of not as bad to actually very bad. I want to specify this because I know there's a couple of picks on here that are not nearly as terrible as others, and I want to make it clear that I give some movies some slack on their shortcomings and others for certain reasons. Let's start with number 10.
Quick stretch, little snack, and here we go.
I'm sure plenty of people who see this will be confused or upset by the movie being on this list, but I honestly don't care about your mid-opinions. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a sequel to the video game adaptation from 2020, directed by Jeff Fowler and written by Pat Casey, Josh Miller, and John Whittington. Ben Schwartz, Jim Carrey, and James Marsden returned from the previous film and are now joined by Knuckles, played by Idris Elba, and Colin O'Shannessy as Tails. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is not good. It's not terrible either, but I also didn't see a lot of god-awful movies in 2022, so this one wasn't safe from the cut. I think both this and the first movie are just okay at best. They're basic, junk food movies for kids. My issues with it start to tip to the bad side due to how stupid the structure and creative choices are, especially by the second half. You have this extremely unnatural and out-of-place familiar father-son thing between James Marsden and Sonic for some reason. You have these scenes where Sonic can just use his super speed to solve a lot of simple problems he's in, but he just doesn't, so the movie can happen. You even have 15 to 20 minute sequence that has no Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, or Eggman involved, and it's just about some random characters that have little to no screen time, and their wedding drama is just so your mom who took you to see the movie can walk out thinking she had a good time. Looking at the runtime on top of that, you feel the film losing a lot of momentum by that point, and realize it's also too long, and you're ready to go by the time the actual final battle starts. In the end, it is again not a terrible movie. It's okay, I guess, but it's constantly labeled as like the best video game movie to date. I wrote this before I saw the Mario movies, so we'll see if that still holds true. Video game movies have had a notable track record of usually being pretty bad, and because of that, every time an okay or decent adaptation comes out, people give it a lot more credit than it deserves. But I'm glad you guys are enjoying your passable movie. Now stop acting like because something wasn't awful, it means it has to be amazing. Movies are allowed to just be okay, and have plenty of faults. Just because it's for kids doesn't mean it has to be simple, mindless, and just fun with no actual thought behind the story and meaning. Sonic 2 is a commercial, and is filled with producers saying, where can we put a random dance sequence? Can we put another bar setting like in the first movie? Can we act like we care about family values by tacking on Sonic, calling Tom his dad, which is weird, especially with the fandom that Sonic has? Can we put in an entire subplot of human characters that no one gives a shit about so parents can feel like the movie is made for their enjoyment at all? Not every kid's movie has to be Pixar, but goddamn, I want to at least see people trying. Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Fight me.
Where are my manners? Sonic, meet Knuckles.
How can I believe in fairy tales?
Moving on to one of the more odd picks of this year, A Fairy Tale After All is also really high up on this list due to me giving a bit of a break. Directed, written, produced, and even edited by Eric Peter Carlson. The movie follows a high school girl who gets magically transported to a fairy tale kingdom on a rescue mission to save her captured father, starring Emily Shannot, Timothy N. Kopax, Brian Hull, and Bridget Winder. This movie is, in all honesty, pretty bad. It's poorly acted, the story is confusing and forceful, and the effects look like they were done on Windows Movie Maker. All that being said, I will be fair and say that the movie also is very low budget. A creative mind is clearly trying to make something magical for a children's audience, but it's not all quite there. Random changes in styles, forgettable songs, and just really lame humor. I still will give credit where credit is due. It felt like someone just wanted to make a movie and actually gave a shit. It's still on this list because it's not very good, but it's more than I could say with some others lower on the card. A Fairy Tale After All, an earnest misfire if there ever was one.
Listen.
After all.
I wanted to show them something that wasn't an illusion.
What I hope is the final installment in this 5 movies too many Jurassic Park franchise, Jurassic World Dominion, directed by Colin Trevorrow, who wrote the film alongside Emily Carmichael. 4 years after dinosaurs are set free by our clone child, the world tries to adjust in the new ecosystem, but a shady Tim Cook-looking CEO has some nasty ploys to further his control over the environment. Our Jurassic World cast will need help from the returning scientists from the original trilogy, in the best finale since Rise of Skywalker, starring Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, Isabella Sermon, Jeff Goldblum, Sam Neill, and Laura Dern. Dominion tries to tie up all the loose ends from both trilogies, bringing back our favorite scientists from the first movies, while also closing the story of the aftermath that was Fallen Kingdom. Ironically, even though the characters from the World Trilogy are acted like they're the focus of the current era, because of the way the series unfolded, bringing back the old guard just spotlights how unmatched they are. Because the story of Dominion is heavily science-focused, guess who has nothing to do in the movie? If you said Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, you'd be right. Our returning cast essentially takes the new spots as the main characters, and they actually save the world while Pratt and Howard spend the majority of the movie just running from dinosaurs looking for their adopted clone child. They play little part in doing anything to help the group as a whole, while the returning scientists get to do a victory lap and show off how they still got it, and point out that Pratt and Howard never had it to begin with. Dominion is still better than Fallen Kingdom, if that really means anything. But just like the other Jurassic Park sequels, its existence is the first problem, followed by the story itself just not being that interesting, becoming more focused on dinosaurs chasing people than the relationship between humans and our lack of hubris. The movie tries to add that back in, but loses all subtlety because it has to make the most mustache-twirling, complete lack of morals or foresight villain they can, because you're not supposed to actually think when you're watching this 2.5-hour movie.
See? Not so bad.
Congratulations. You are worthy. And remember, reality is cursed.
Choose or Die is a horror movie directed by Toby Meekins, who also wrote the screenplay with Simon Allen and Matthew James Wilkinson, starring Lola Evans and Asa Butterfield. Choose or Die tries to stand out with its premise and visuals, but fails to hide its very forgettable plot, lack of scares, and accidental hilarious scenes. When the mystery of this seemingly haunted text-based game is revealed, it feels a lot sillier than I assumed they were expecting. This is an example of a movie that, in reality, not much to talk about without giving certain plot points away, and I don't plan on doing that. But even though it's only 84 minutes, I'd still say don't waste your time.
Choose or die.
Mr. Caldwell, hello?
So that the next renewal can begin.
Directed by Rich Ragsdale and written by Robert Shep and Mark Yug, The Long Night is about a couple taking a weekend trip to a quiet southern farmland in search for the woman's long-lost family. Their vacation is soon spoiled by a mysterious cult stalking the house with an unknown motive, starring Scout Taylor Compton, Nolan Gerard Funk, Jeff Fahey, and Deborah Kara Unger. The Long Night is a movie that would have been even higher or lower on this list if it committed to what kind of movie it was gonna be. The first hour of this movie is extremely bland. By the numbers, dumb as rocks filled characters, decisions that make no sense, and just a plotting story that feels like it's trying to fill the 90-minute runtime. Then, out of nowhere, the last 30 minutes of the movie actually start giving a shit and are filled with creative and unsettling visuals. An actual plot and twists are revealed, and anything to make this movie seem to have some sort of voice and identity is finally seen. It makes it almost even more annoying to watch because clearly someone had an idea for a horror movie and had no idea how to make it interesting until the climax. So they just make you sit there for an hour to finally be rewarded with a decent surprise. Due to the half and half nature of this movie, it fits nowhere better than just about the middle of the list.
Don't you wish to be free of your pain? Yes. The long night begins.
Everyone in Mexico knows story, but it's no lie. Llorona es real.
The Legend of La Llorona is a horror movie directed by Patricia Harris Seeley and written by Jose Prendes, starring Autumn Reeser, Antonio Cupo, Danny Trejo, and Zamia Fardino, based on the Latin American folklore of the crying ghost that has a penchant for drowning children. This is not connected to the Conjuring franchise, that's a different bad La Llorona movie. This one is a much cheaper looking, very muddled, confusing, and awkward attempt of a horror movie. Unlike The Long Night, this movie's third act does not try to save it, but instead doubles down on the goofiness, and unfortunately this movie was not trying to go for goofy. The constant bland scares and boring progression of over-the-top family drama never gets you engaged like it hopes. Go ahead and skip this half-hearted attempt of a ghost story.
She's coming.
another long night of crime and violence.
Some say it's only a matter of time before the city implodes.
I think we're finished here.
A standalone superhero movie in this day and age? I might as well check it out. Nah, crap, it's Samaritan. Directed by Julius Avery and written by Bragi F. Schutt, starring Sylvester Stallone as the titular Samaritan, Havan Walton, Pilo Asbach, and Dasha Polanco. A boy grows suspicious that his neighbor might be a long-thought-dead superhero, while an underground crime group seeks to take over the city. When the most creative and interesting part of the movie is the first 5 minutes with these animated comic book panels, that's never a good sign. Samaritan tries to set this dramatic stage of character depth and evolution, but also can't help but use cartoon bad guys at the same time. The story is uninspired, really easy to guess any twist it tries to subtly hint at, and the action is bland and covered up by bad CGI. Amazon, just stick with Invincible and The Boys.
My son sacrificed his life to save me. These powers are not a gift, but a curse.
Well, apparently even the bigger superhero companies have been stumbling hard this year too. Directed by Juanme Colette Serra, and written by Adam Steichel, Rory Haynes, and Sohrab Narshavani. Black Adam was a movie The Rock couldn't help but hype to the highest degree. After watching it, it's one of the best superhero movies 2007 has to offer. We've seen the anti-hero protagonist. We've seen famous superhero crossover team-ups. We've seen the more brutal action. All these can be found in superhero movies from many years ago. A bigger mark against this movie is that all of these things, that it's just repeating from earlier superhero movies, it doesn't do any of them well in the first place. The action is the best thing it has to go for it, and it's fine. Dr. Fate is a great addition, and he can't even come close to saving this movie. The Rock just floats around the screen saying, "I'm no hero," acting like he was a man who went too far and doesn't see redemption being possible. But in reality, he only hurts bad guys and is always saving innocent people. The only thing the movie acts like doesn't make him a hero is that he's willing to kill. But DC has never established a no-killing rule for like half of their normal superheroes, so that character detail doesn't work. You have the Justice Society coming in to establish new action figures and spin-offs, but because Black Adam is the main character, no one has anything that interesting as a character except Dr. Fate. These people are so bland that their headquarters and transportation are just leftover assets from the X-Men movies. Black Adam was labeled as the reset of the DCEU, even though that's clearly Flash's job. But if this is the new step forward for DC, they immediately tripped over their own foot and fell face first into overdone, underwritten bullshit once again. Also, great choice on a post-credits scene to become immediately pointless 2 months after the movie released.
You can be its savior.
You need a doctor?
I am a doctor.
Speaking of studios that can't make a good franchise to save their life, Sony's meme of the year, Morbius, had a wide release on the only day that fit it best. If Black Adam felt like a movie that came out 15 years too late, Morbius came out 25 years too late. Directed by Daniel Espinosa, and written by Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless. Starring Jared Leto, Matt Smith, and Adria Arjona. A story that feels so rushed that the climax of the movie is just over 5 minutes and they wrap everything up in less than 2 minutes after that, never failing for characters to do just the weirdest, dumbest, and plot progressingly forceful thing to do. The events that take place feel like they were written by someone who was dozing off while watching Venom and was told to make a movie that kinda fits that universe, and the closest they got was the equality of work in another poor I'm no hero bullshit like we talked in the last movie. Is this movie as worthy of the memes as it spawned? Sure, why not? I also may have dunked on Black Adam's post-credits scene for being retroactively pointless, but Morbius's post-credits scene? Holy shit, that was made because they must have forgotten to connect to other movies and they wrote it on set, going against the continuity that even sets up the crossover possibility in the first place established in a movie it's trying to attach itself to.
A bizarre story developing at the Manhattan Detention Center when a man identifying himself as Adrian Toombs simply appeared in an otherwise empty cell. A hearing has been set that could likely lead to his immediate release.
Morbius is driving in the sunset at 2 a.m. Then it finally looks like nighttime just before 3 a.m. So where would Vulture get his suit that exploded in Homecoming and also doesn't exist in this universe? Even if he rebuilt it, he made it exactly the same as his original suit, and he doesn't have the alien tech that he used to make the original suit.
I've been reading about you.
I'm listening.
Listening to what? He hasn't offered any information.
I'm not sure how I got here. Has to do with Spider-Man, I think.
How would you possibly know that?
I'm still figuring this place out, but I think a bunch of guys like us should team up. Could do some good.
Intriguing.
If you enjoy a so bad it's good type movie, you might be able to try Morbius purely through its comedy of errors.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the eighth wonder of the world.
Another year, another Disney live-action remake gets added to the list. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, who wrote the film with Chris Welts. Starring Tom Hanks, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, and apparently Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Pinocchio stands out even more than the recent installments for multiple reasons. First off, the original Pinocchio from 1940 still holds up, with some weaker character moments holding it back, but still a decent viewing. Secondly, the changes it makes to the original animated movie only make the lessons and story extremely pointless and non-existent. Thirdly, you can just watch the clearly much better version of the same type of story on Netflix, and it only emphasizes the many shortcomings of this remake. And lastly, much like all the other remakes, all the new characters and story beats they add only make the story they're copying even worse, because Disney has the problem with changing elements of the story but not changing the main story itself. So now there's contradicting morals and story beats that no longer mesh. The point of Pinocchio is that he learns from his mistakes, and he's not a bad kid, but he is a kid. Sometimes kids make mistakes, and that's a good thing for them to see and learn from. This Pinocchio is already fully responsible, and the only time he gets roped into the bad side of town is because he wasn't allowed to do the responsible thing in the first place, even though he actually tried, or he's literally roped into something with no convincing. In the original, he ditches school to become an actor because he's naive and is sweet-talked into it. In the remake, he actually goes to school after telling off the people trying to get him to skip school in the first place. The only reason he tries to become an actor is because he's literally kicked out of school because he's a puppet. There's no lesson to learn. He did what he was supposed to do, but he was denied. The Pleasure Island part is changed to where Pinocchio gives into peer pressure and starts misbehaving because it looks fun, stopping when he realizes everyone's becoming a jackass. In the remake, the beer is changed to root beer, and there's no smoking. He doesn't take part in any needless destruction or misbehavior, so his only crime is drinking 2 mugs of soda. That's it. What an asshole, right? What a shit kid. That lesson totally makes sense. The remake strips away any lesson that could be learned so kids don't accidentally get the wrong idea from Pinocchio's bad choices. But to avoid that problem, you could just treat kids like they can understand the difference between right and wrong and give them something to learn when it's literally the premise of the entire story. For what this movie represents as a whole in the industry, I can't help but put it anywhere but the very bottom of my worst of 2022 list.
You will always be my real boy.
And that does it for the not so good films of this past year. I'll try to have my me's video up sooner than later and really get this channel started up again. Hope to see you guys soon.